Today, we're looking at a green ink by Bookbinders Emerald Boa Snake. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that you can skip around, but if you got the time, I would appreciate you if you check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would remind you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into this Noodler's Naponset with a music nib, wrote with it for a day, and then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to standardize some of the writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, more papers are tested, and they'll show up a bit later. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, very minor amounts of shading. It's because of a kind of a squeegee effect that stubs have. The extra fine is a tad, well, it's about the same tone as the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading all the way through. So much shading that it looks at first like it might be a little bit darker. 8 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading all the way through. It certainly got much darker here through the end, and I'm wondering, no, just for some reason got much darker. I don't know how long it took to dry. For some reason I forgot to write that part down here, but that's been taken out of my average for this when it comes to its dry times. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows a lot of color variation. The medium doesn't show as much, although we do get really good shading in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some nice shading. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, nice shading throughout this writing. 11 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, still a very nice shading. 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows no color variation, but we definitely get it in the writing. And Rhodia. With no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, minor shading. The extra fine is a little darker than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading all the way through all of this writing. 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading throughout the writing. 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows good color variation, and we get that in the writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this yellow, because it's pushing all the way up. And there's a weird discoloration, like a super light gray at pushing up. But you can't tell if that's just a gray that's there or a discoloration because the water went through it, I guess, maybe. But then we get this yellow, and it's a very bright yellow, and the green that occurs at first makes me feel as if that's a yellow and blue makes green, but I really don't think that that's the case because of the way that this blue appears at the top. I believe that this is 3 or 4 different dyes making this, which is the reason it gives us so much shading. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And this is where I'm really getting the idea that that might be a very light gray or a very light green because of how that is a line across the bottom, and there's some white separation between that and when the yellow comes in. Now the green occurrence is the same as it was on the original chromatography. And the reason that I really think this is its own dye is again the way that blue appears at the top. It doesn't blend out of green into that blue. That blue itself is totally on top. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I feel safe using this in a note-taking situation, even though there's the tiniest bit of loss in the capital H. I can completely read quite easily everything that's there. That's surprising how well it did, but not with a little bit of that hold on in that one lightest color from the chromatography. Now, water is completely reactivating and lifting this off the page. It's all that it took for me to get it out of my pen. We start to see the white of the paper coming through. Pen flush looks like it's doing less than water did, and that's a user error on my paper towels. Sometimes I'm holding it there a little too long, leaving some of that green on the paper to grab a hold of it again. That's me, not the pen flush. The 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper. Completely remove it from your options for cleaning your pens with this ink. I test viscosity or flow with a tilt test that I'll link the video on how I do that. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Bookbinders Emerald Boa Snake has a viscosity of 2.09, making it just wetter than normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Bookbinders Emerald Boa Snake has an average dry time of 11 seconds, making this a fast dry ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Bookbinders Emerald Boa Snake, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice orange, and I chose Diamine Coral. The second writing sample is done on Levenger, Strathmore writing, and Limone paper. Here we're looking at Levenger paper. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some nice shading within it. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading, 6 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine or stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, a little bit of shading throughout. It's really quite nice. Instead, it's just the lighter spots that are popping through are giving it some personality. 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show a little bit of color variation left to right, and we do get it in the writing. Strathmore writing paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, some spots of shading. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading here. I think we lose it to the tone of the paper. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some good color variation. The medium shows none, and that's about what we got in the writing. And Limone paper. Now there's a lot of bleeding spots that occur. Not the most fountain pen friendly paper. So a lot of spots are coming through, but not coming through and touching the page underneath. Just not letting you use the back of the page. The 1.1 has a ridiculous amount of feathering. It has some spread. No halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has a ridiculous, is the same tone as the stub, with a ridiculous amount of feathering, with spread from about an extra fine to a fine. It's got no halo, no sheen, no shade, no use on this paper, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. It has still ridiculous amounts of feathering. It still has spread from about a medium to a broad. No halo, no sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us the tiniest bit of color variation, although it's really not there in the writing, and that's all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Bookbinders Emerald Boa Snake? This is an amazing green that shades like camouflage. I love it. It looks great. In its lighter tones, it can be a very loud green. So you kind of have to watch out for that. But the personality that comes through from this ink is truly standout awesome. What nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I found drier pens really made for a very, very boring green to look at, but a really wet pen made an amazing green with truly awesome shading. Can I say that enough? Awesome. I'm going to remind you that I'm here every day with a new ink review. Thanks for watching.